So after the last camera we looked at and its problem with the mounting hardware, we decided to check out a comparable Amcrest camera, and it has a supposed stunning low light performance. Well, I'm just going to shut up and let it speak for itself. They are pretty similar ballpark cameras. Now, of course, prices are subject to change. The Amcrest is a little more, but of course you do get more with the Amcrest, which we will show you. Now, one big difference you'll see with this camera is there's a couple different models of the same exact base camera. There's the 2.8 millimeter lens and the 3.6 millimeter lens, and say that 5 times fast. Now, where that becomes a difference, you're like, well, what is all this millimeter stuff? And well, aren't you in the US, Travis? Well, yeah, but we still go by the millimeter for the cameras, of course, and well, we should on all the other stuff, but that's here nor there. So on the 2.8 millimeter, you do get 103 degrees viewing angle, and on the 3.6, you get only the 85. And typically in IP cameras, the millimeter, when it's higher, it's going to be more of a zoomed in look on the viewing area. And sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad. Just depends on where you're putting that camera, which is why I do like the option of being able to pick the lens. Now, we're not going to go and run down all the specs and bore you and everything. Of course, if you wanted to, you could pause the video here, or you can just go look at it on Amcrest's website. But the cameras are going to be pretty much the same. They do have PoE, power over Ethernet, and they just require the regular PoE. They don't need PoE Plus, since they aren't your PTZ type cameras. Now, for you ones that live up north from me, you may like the operating conditions for the Amcrest. They do show that they can go in a much colder environment than the Reolinks can. Now, I don't really have any way to test that, so maybe y'all can tell me down in the comments down below. Or is it you guys? So enough about the camera. Let's go put some hands on it and check it out. Well, there's probably one place that you probably won't want to buy cameras from. Where is that going to be? Well, of course, you don't want to buy cameras from PCBWay because they just make the components that go in the cameras themselves, such as the PCB boards. But I can guarantee they do have some cameras there that make sure your PCB boards get to your door the correct way. So if you're going to design some PCBs and get them done and created, well, check them out at PCBWay. You can get them shipped straight to your door, some high quality stuff. Check them out, PCBWay. Of course, your typical little bag with the waterproof, or I would more say water resistant type of connection for your RJ45, and all the little pamphlets we're not going to look at, from the warranty to, and that one may be useful for some people, the little template for mounting things. Definitely go do this on any camera that you have. No matter the brand, go make sure you keep the firmware updated on your cameras. Even if you do have them on a VLAN and have them all blocked from the net, make sure your firmware is up to date. So you get your little mounts with the typical screws and your sheetrock stuff, no big deal. Hopefully this isn't the same mistake that Reolink made, but maybe we'll find out. And there's a lock and unlock, and this does say front and up. And these screws are set inside, pretty simple. Now for the camera itself, I did cover up my unique serial number, so you wouldn't be scanning it into your apps later, even though mine will be blocked. This is your standard little screw on, pop on for that waterproof or water resistant RJ45. This is doing power over Ethernet that we will be using. And if you wanted to do it by the standard 12 volt DC, you can. If you didn't have power over Ethernet, no big deal, but why not do it all over Ethernet? There is no Wi-Fi on this, of course. Now, this is kind of like that Reolink RLC 520, it looks like. And I don't see any set screws right offhand. Of course, we need to do the honors. So this one does have the microphone right here. It does have a pretty large lens, and I'm kind of curious to see how it does in a low light situation, since their 8 megapixel camera that has the same type of looking lens here. It does really well in low light, and even some of my cameras don't even switch to black and white IR mode because it just uses the regular ambient light from the street lights and stays in color, and it looks great. So on the back, or the top, I guess, depending on how you do this, if you did put the wire, like if you wanted this to run across and you want to hide the wire, you couldn't do that. You can pop out this little notch here and you can put the wire in there. But for typical mounts, what we're going to do is you would typically drill the hole, run this through, and then you have no wires at all. Makes a real clean installation. So this ring is probably, it doesn't look to be as bad as the Reolink one, but let's see. So if this was mounted up on something, of course, we have to really see this when we mount this on our little board thing. And then you place this in here, and then you would pop the camera and pop it back. So it looks like it fits in these little holes and then slides back. So it does kind of lock. But when you lock it, does that lock this too? No, it does not. It does not lock the pivot. I do not like this again. I don't see anything that locks. And I could be wrong. And if you see I'm wrong, feel free to put me down and call me out in the comments down below. I'm just not seeing anything type of set screw or anything. The only other thing I see, I almost dropped it, but whatever. Only thing else I see is the SD card door, along with, that's where the reset button is at. Not liking this little trend here. Well, let's go get this one installed. Now we did take several photos. I wanted to compare it to the Reolink 520. We have them mounted on the same exact little test board that we have and tried to point them in exactly the same location. But you'll see, well, the lenses are different. This is the 2.8 millimeter lens on the Amcrest 5 megapixel, and the Reolink has about a 4 millimeter lens, so it's going to have a little more zoomed in look, but the 2.8 will catch it a little more. I did find the IR pattern. It's probably a little lower and maybe doesn't go as far as the Reolink, but it's really going to be down to what you need in the area you're trying to cover. Now, supposedly this camera does have this superior lens for being able to pull in some light in a very low light area. So we did cut off all the IR, all the lights in this backyard, and it gets really, really dark in this backyard except for the street light you can see in the distance. And, well, I didn't really see that superior lens for pulling in this crazy light as they spoke about in the description. So once we did move the cameras to the front yard where we had some street lights and just some decent, not crazy bright, but just your typical street lights in the neighborhood, you can definitely see how that starlight illumination really shines compared to the Reolink camera. And it's really no contest. There is a little bit of noise we did find, but I mean, the picture is just crazy compared to what another camera would do without the starlight illumination. So definitely impressive for a camera at this price point. Now, if you are interested on, well, how do we install this camera and what is PoE and how do we run Ethernet? Well, we've covered that in several other camera videos, and I don't want to kind of beat the dead horse here. So we'll leave the link down below for the previous camera video we did, which we kind of show how to run your Ethernet cable, as well as showing how to hook up PoE. And if you are interested, maybe we'll do some of actually how to put ends on Ethernet cable and whatnot. Let us know down in the comments down below. Maybe we'll do a short little tutorial on how to do those. It's really easy to put ends on your own Cat 5 and Cat 6 cabling. And this is pretty similar to some of the other Amcrest cameras. The layout's pretty simple. You can do your snapshots. You can turn the sound on because this camera does have one-way audio so you can hear. And you do have the playback option. Of course, we did install a micro SD card in this camera, but of course, since this camera does support ONVIF and RTSP, you can hook it up to Motion Eye, Blue Iris, Shinobi, whatever other type of program or NVR that does support ONVIF and RTSP. I'll go ahead and shrink myself down here since you can see less of me, which is a good thing, and more of the interface. So in the playback, if you look at, I've had this recording for a couple days, you can see the green squares, and this does allow up to a 256 gig micro SD card. And of course, you probably do want to record it somewhere else too, because it always seems like that SD card fails right when you need it. Go ahead and pick the date you want, and it will show all the different dates. And there's different pages, and just page to the one you want. And once you double click on the file, it pulls up the video itself. And you can jump to any other files just by double clicking, and it pulls up that video. And based off of the motion or sound or whatever you have for triggering the different motion or recording, whatever it might be. And of course, we do have this triggered off of sound. And sorry if I made your dogs bark, if you have any. So you get it. There's the playback. And of course, if you wanted to, you could download the file as well. So this is where one of the things is where the Amcrest cameras really shine compared to some other cameras that I've used, is all the crazy features that you have, and you can set all the different features in even a general day and night profiles. That way you can have your own custom settings for day and then custom settings for night. Typical stuff you see here: brightness, contrast, etc., exposure, the backlight mode. Also during the day, if you want to mess around with stuff and be able to pull in more of the shadows, is turn on the WDR. That's the wide dynamic range. And there's a little slider, and it will allow you to sometimes pull in those shadows, but it's going to vary based on installation. White balance. There's your day and night. You can change the sensitivity on when it switches from day and night. This is one of the cool things I really love about the Amcrest versus some of the other cameras, is on the IR light, you can leave it on auto and that will auto adjust, or you can change it to manual, and then this gives you this intensity slider. So you can change the IR light. If it's blowing out the picture, you can actually pull it back some. You can set it where you want, and even find in some areas, due to this lens on the camera, that it may actually switch back to color mode. Now for the video configuration, this is another area where it really shines, is the frame interval. Because especially for the Blue Iris users, if you match this to the frame rate, you can actually turn on the limit decoding, which also saves CPU and GPU cycles and allows you to get more cameras out of your computer on Blue Iris. And of course, the overlay section, pretty cool stuff. It's simple. Got the channel title. You can drag these titles around. If you can turn them on and off, you can change the time. If you want to put things, this is the OSD stuff. And it's just real simple, really intuitive. Do what you want, cut things off. If you want to cut off the little watermark, which we normally do, just go in here and hit disable and hit save, and that's it. And that little watermark is gone. And for the audio, I did notice that it does, the sampling frequency is only on 8,000 on the AAC codec. I normally will change that to 16,000. That way you get a little better audio. Now, network, we're not going to run through everything because they do come set up as DHCP, and most people use DHCP. For the connection, you can come in here and change the ports. As you can see, it does support RTSP on port 554. Now, down to the events. This is where it gets a little deeper on the Amcrest cameras again, is you could do the motion detection. Now, what's different about the motion detection, you can already see that you can do the schedules and the periods, and you can get crazy based on the schedule for the motion detection. And then here's the really cool part I like about the cameras. You don't get just one region. You could come in here and say remove all, and say I wanted a region over here, and then say I wanted this region over here, and then this one down here, and then the green over here. Well, you can come in here and set the sensitivity and thresholds different per region. And you don't just have that one setting because, hey, everything is different. Sometimes you may have something that moves a little bit. Maybe you have something that moves a lot and you want to change the sensitivity in different areas. Well, Amcrest gives you very flexible options to get that done. The feature we did talk about is the audio detection. Is you can come in here and do audio detection to kick on a recording. A lot of cameras don't have this. Of course, we do have the destination going to an SD card. You can have it go to a NAS, FTP server, whatever you want to do. In system, manage your users, you can default settings, you can import and export settings, and you can come down and do the ever important upgrade. Make sure you upgrade to the latest firmware on all your cameras, no matter the brand. And that's going to be pretty much it for the interface. Lots of features to dig through, and that's what you pay for, that little bit of extra money compared to some other cameras in that same realm of megapixel and lens types. Now for you Blue Iris users, stupid simple to put this camera in. Put in your IP address of the camera. I would suggest doing a reserved IP on your router. That way these don't change. And you don't have to set it in the camera itself. It keeps it all in one spot on your router. Put in your username and password. Hit find inspect. That's it. It's done. Hit close. Hit OK. Now if you did set your frame interval at that exact frame rate, you can turn on limit decoding. And it's going to help out with some of the CPU processing with this camera. Other than that, once you put in that information, you're done. Of course, if you want to go set up any of your type of triggers and recording all the time, that's all up to you, and you can do that as your setup needs. And for the Home Assistant users, don't forget you have the built-in Amcrest integration built right into Home Assistant with no custom components. Currently, as of the recording of this video, it will require you to use the YAML configuration. You can't do it through the UI just yet, but it is pretty simple. You'll be able to grab the binary sensor, the camera, and if you are using an SD card, you can put the SD card sensor in there as well. They do have some sample configurations that you can grab straight out of here and throw in your configuration YAML. Just make sure you do change your IP, your username and password, and you probably want to utilize the secrets to do so. Simply go into the file editor or whatever you're using to edit your configuration YAML, and you can just throw in this piece here. We are using the secrets to assign the IP address, username and password, and we are just using the online and motion detected in this example. You save the configuration, restart Home Assistant because it is the YAML configuration, and then you can add these two Lovelace cards, which has your motion detected and also as well as your connected binary sensor in case you want to monitor to give you a notification if that camera went down for some reason. And it does give you this live card, which you can click and pull up the full stream, as well as it will be live on the dashboard as long as you do set the card to be live itself using the camera view. If you do set it to auto, it will only update probably around every 10 seconds. But if you set it to live, it will update on the GUI. And of course, you do get the motion detected sensor, so you can use this to drive other automations and things using the motion detection sensor. And we'll give it a shot here. And that's it. We see the detected, and it will clear itself after the motion detected sensor goes away on the camera itself. Definitely something you don't get, again, with the Reolink cameras. This is all built into Home Assistant, no custom components. Just throw it in and you're done. Pretty slick. So all in all, pretty good camera, especially at this price point. Now, of course, I don't like the mounting hardware. We're seeing this trend. I'm not sure why they're going this way without set screws. I mean, it's not that hard for people to pick up a screwdriver, is it? I mean, you have to run a wire to it and you have to screw it into the wall or whatever. Why couldn't they just put a set screw? I don't get it. Now they do have an app, and the Amcrest app, it's okay. I maybe have to lean more towards the Reolink app for ease of use, but it is pretty simple. We just went through, we scanned the QR code on the tag on the camera itself. And if you did have PTP enabled on the camera, it would just pull in with no firewall rules and it would be done. Now you can put in using the IP address and port and whatever if you know your networking side of things. But again, where I really say this camera shines is you can get into the nitty gritty and you can change all those little settings to make the really good picture based on the area you're trying to cover. But still have to say my favorite is going to be the Amcrest 4K turret. It does have a set screw and it may not need the 4K quality as the 5 megapixel versus the 8 megapixel. Well, that's here nor there, but it's a really great camera. If you can afford the higher cost of that 4K, I would really opt for that. Otherwise, this is a pretty decent camera for you. Now, if you see any other cameras out there, maybe you'd like us to do a little review of or comparison or whatever on a camera, maybe a little shootout video, leave us a comment down below of what camera type and maybe why you'd want to see that one looked at. So I appreciate all the Patreon subscribers, and all your generosity allows us to do these various camera reviews without any bias. Well, like we've ever had any before, but we do appreciate it. So you know the drill. Smash that subscribe button, hit that bell icon, catch us in our next video, and y'all take care.